Hey, I'm David Rogers, and welcome to my studio gallery here in Morro Bay, California. In this video, I'll walk you through a few of my favorite techniques for capturing the movement and rhythm of flowing water. This demonstration comes directly from the Colorful Waterfall Watercolor Mastery Workshop, where we explore not just water, but rocks and light and foliage and atmosphere. You can find more information on that in the description below. Let's jump in and get started. So here we join our Colorful Waterfall Watercolor Mastery Workshop in progress, and we're just getting started on the water. And as you can see from the image on the left, which is actually a thumbnail of the finished painting, we're about to get started on the waterfall. So we're mixing up some paint here. Now the paint color that I'm using here for the waterfall is actually a mixture of cobalt blue with a little bit of indigo. And the key really to moving water is to allow your brush strokes to mimic the movement of the water. Your brush stroke should always follow the movement of the water. And if you consider that as you're painting moving water, you're 9 times out of 10 you'll end up with a realistic effect. Also remember that when you're painting moving water, that you really should have or try to have all three values represented. Now, when I say all three values, what I'm talking about are the lightest value, which here is actually the white of the paper. And what I'm doing here really is adding the mid-tone value to the paper. And then once this dries, we'll add the darkest value to the waterfall itself. But all of the brush strokes, as you can see, all the brush strokes are kind of following the movement of the water. And something else to remember when you are painting moving water is that you want to have a combination of hard and soft edges, especially where you have water that's moving very quickly. In a waterfall situation, most of your edges are actually going to be soft edges because the water is moving so fast. And something else that's interesting too, when you look at pictures of moving water, notice how in the majority of the pictures that you see, that the faster that the water is moving, the lighter in value it is. Now, when I say value, what I'm talking about is the lightness or the darkness of a color. And the quicker the water is, the lighter the water becomes, or the brighter the water becomes. It's moving so fast that it doesn't really have time to pick up any reflections. Now you will still need to represent those three values that I'm talking about, but you're going to have a lot more soft edges the faster that the water is moving. So here what you see me doing is I'm actually removing a lot of the pencil lines that are still in that on the white of the paper there. Now, as I was saying before, this really is a kind of a work in progress here. As you can see that I've added the darker shadow areas on both sides of the waterfall to really help that white lighter value of the water to really stand out. And now I'm just adding some more rocks in the middle of the waterfall. And I've also added the rocks down below where the water begins to slow down. Now, what's going to be interesting is when we get down here to the bottom of the waterfall, or where the water is slowing down, that's actually going to pick up a lot more color. It's going to have a much darker value, and anywhere where the water slows down, it's actually going to be able to pick up reflections. You'll be able to see through the water. And what I'm doing here with the waterfall is I'm actually, as I was mentioning before, what I'm doing here is I'm actually coming back to add that number 3 value, that darkest value. Again, you want to try, even if regardless of the speed of the water or how fast the water is moving, if you can incorporate those 3 values that we're talking about, the white of the paper, the mid-tone value, and the darkest value, that your water is going to be very convincing. It's going to have, it's going to look natural. And the main thing is again, to remember
that you, especially when it comes to water that's moving, you want to try to include those hard and soft edges that we're talking about. And you'll see that as I'm putting down brush strokes here, what I'm doing is I'm coming back into that brush stroke with a wet brush and just kind of softening up a lot of those edges. And because again, I want to have a nice mix of both hard and soft edges. So here I'll come back and I'll just soften up a few of those edges and let that blend, and just picking up a little bit more pigment here. And again, I'm trying to stick to those two colors that we're using here. I'm using the uh, a mixture of the indigo and just a little bit of cobalt blue mixed together. And I'm using probably pretty close to maybe a light 1% milk consistency. What you'll see me doing also is I'm trying to incorporate just a few dry brush marks within this shape as well. And I think that what that does is it's lending a little bit more action to the water and kind of breaking up some of those edges just a little bit more instead of just having the hard and soft, where the dry brush effect is really kind of helping to give a little bit more texture to the to that overall shape, and just make it a little bit more realistic looking. You'll also notice that sometimes I'll make a mark and I'll come back with a tissue and just lighten up that paint, that brush stroke just a little bit with the tissue, just to make sure that I've got an even value for that particular part of that part of the shape. Okay, and we're just going to darken up this shadow right below this rock at the top of the waterfall. The water's kind of coming around that rock, and it's separating that waterfall, kind of cutting the waterfall right there. So there's going to be a really nice vertical shadow. And again, you'll notice that all of my brush strokes are all in exactly the same direction. They're going with the flow of the water that's coming over this waterfall. They're all perfectly vertical with the water's action. And if you follow that guideline, if you follow that general rule, whenever you're painting water, especially water that's moving, if your brushstrokes follow the action of the water, it's pretty hard to go wrong. And if you try to incorporate these three values that I'm talking about, the lightest value, the mid-tone value, and the darker value, and have hard and soft edges, chances are you're going to end with a convincing result. So that's probably going to complete our waterfall. And eventually we will put a shadow, a little bit more of a cast shadow from some of those trees over the waterfall. But let's move down to the front of the painting, and we'll paint the water that's in the front of this waterfall. Now, what you'll notice here as we move into this next part of the painting, now the action of the water, if we're still following that same guideline, if we're going to allow our brushstrokes to follow the action of the water, then if the action of the water is still or slowing down, then the brush stroke is going to be flat. Now, what's especially important to remember whenever you have water that is standing water or flat water, the water wants to be painted as a surface. And if you paint it as a surface, then a surface is going to reflect light, it's going to reflect shadow, it's going to reflect the objects that are around it, but it's also going to have those three values that we're talking about. It's still going to have the lightest value, the white of the paper, the mid-tone value, and the darkest value, and it's still going to have the hard and soft edges. Now, what you see me doing here is I'm actually using a little bit more color because, like I said, it's going to pick up some of those reflections. And because the water is slowing down, it's going to have more color. Like I was saying, the faster the water is, the lighter the water is, the more that it slows down, the more color that the water is going to have, because when it slows down, it has an opportunity to pool and catch reflections. And typically the color of water is really determined by its surroundings, what's being reflected into the water, and what's under the water, or what's in the water. So you really have a lot of flexibility in your color choices. And here what you see me doing is just giving a little bit more variation to some of these brush strokes, a little bit more color variation, and just working my way around the composition, seeing where it might need a little bit more color. And remember too that again, it is a combination of hard and soft edges. So you're going to have you're going to have soft edges, but you're also going to have a little bit of gradation within those reflections as well. Soft transitions from one color to another, or where a color goes from maybe a darker value to a lighter value. Just a lot of really nice soft color changes there. Just working our way into the back of that little stream towards the waterfall. Look at these brush strokes from the front of the painting to the back of the painting. You see where the brush strokes are. Looks like the water has slowed down, and where you see the white of the paper, it looks like the water is moving. It looks like the water is faster. So that's what I'm talking about when I say the faster the water, the lighter it is, and the slower the water, the more color that the water is going to have. So if you stick to those guidelines, it's pretty hard to go wrong. And just allow your brush strokes to follow the action of the water, just like you see me doing here. And whatever way the water is moving, just allow your brush strokes to follow that motion. Incorporate the three values that we're talking about, and hard and soft edges, and chances are you'll have a pretty convincing result.
If this demonstration inspired you to keep exploring, you'll love the full Watercolor Mastery Workshop, Colorful Waterfall, and you can find the link in the description below. And as always, if you found this helpful, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, believe in your brushstrokes, believe in yourself, and I'll see you next time.